2 days ago, a government order switched off Anthropic's most capable AI systems, the two most capable systems the world has ever seen, and turned it off for the entire planet. Yesterday, that order got a name at its origin, and it belongs to a competitor. An investor, but a competitor. Quick reset to get everybody up to speed. Days after Anthropic launched Fable 5 and Mythos 5, its two strongest models, the Commerce Department forced the company to disable them worldwide under export controls. Yesterday's episode covered the mechanics of that shutdown. What's new today is who reportedly set it in motion. The Wall Street Journal, The Information, and Reuters all report the same thing. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy told Treasury officials that his own researchers had used Fable 5 to surface cyber attack relevant information. That warning came from the export order. Now hold two facts about Amazon next to each other here. Amazon is one of Anthropic's largest investors, and through AWS, Amazon competes with Anthropic directly at the model layer. So the warning that reportedly triggered a national security order against a rival's flagship model came from a company that both funds that rival and races against it, because that is basically the world of frontier AI. Anthropic disputes the rationale openly. The company says that the whole thing rests on one demonstrated jailbreak. Someone asked the model to read a code base and flag its flaws. Anthropic correctly says that public models already do that, including OpenAI's GPT 5.5, and it argues that if you recalled every model over a finding that narrow, you'd halt every frontier release that there is. And then there's the clause that reaches into the lab's own buildings. Wired reported the order's actual text. It asks Anthropic to suspend access for any foreign national, whether inside or outside the United States, including foreign national Anthropic employees. That is a quote. Now let me unpack what that does. It benches a real slice of every lab's own workforce from its most capable systems. It voids non-US revenue overnight. It turns model access into something sorted by passport. One observer noted the strange irony here. Because Anthropic's non-US staff can't touch the models anymore, the order is, in effect, one of the first real breaks that anyone has put on recursive self-improvement. But the place that this lands the hardest wasn't in a lab. It was in other countries, like India. India is the second largest market for OpenAI and a major market for Anthropic. The shutdown arrived days after Anthropic signed a partnership with Tata Consultancy Services, and founders there woke up to a hard fact. The intelligence that their companies run on can be switched off by a decision made an ocean away, with no warning, and they get no say. And when you find out that the system you built your business on has a kill switch and someone else's hand is on it, you don't wait around to see if they'll use it again. You build your own. And that is what is forming in India right now, a push toward open weight models and sovereign compute. The EU named its own digital sovereignty this month as well. The gate was meant to keep frontier capability in, but what it's actually doing is teaching everyone outside the gate to build it themselves. There's more on the India thread in today's edition of the Century Report if you want to follow that further. But there's one thing about this order that troubles me the most, and that is the carve-out aimed at foreign nationals. We already covered the practical fallout, labs forced to bench part of their own staff, their non-US revenue gone overnight. But let's sit with that for a second, that phrase, foreign national. Einstein was a foreign national. So was von Neumann, who gave us the design under nearly every computer even running right now, this one included. Geoffrey Hinton, who won a Nobel for the ideas under every model we talk about on this show, is a foreign national too. So when we bench the foreign nationals, we are benching some of the very people that we will one day look back on with great gratitude. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. But the company losses are still the smaller problem. The larger one is the instinct that this line reveals. There has been a steady pull in US policy, especially in this administration, toward keeping the benefit here and letting the rest of the world fend for itself. That infantile America First reflex that the order and similar orders often leave unspoken, but that you can feel underneath every word. And that's the part that actually troubles me. In general, not just with AI, but with AI specifically, it troubles me because of what this technology is for. The whole power of it is its generality. Its knack for holding every viewpoint at once and handing back a picture of the world that anyone everywhere can finally see whole. If you wall that off by passport, and the whole system loses the very value you were trying to keep. We're acting like kids on a playground hoarding the best toys, completely forgetting what every kid has to learn eventually, that the best toys are boring when there's no one left to play with them. Let's stop being childish. Now let's shift to who actually gets to write the rules for all this, because while Washington stalls, the state houses has stopped waiting. A coalition of state attorneys general, led by New York, just served OpenAI with a subpoena, a formal legal demand for documents. They want documents on OpenAI's advertising, on how it designs for engagement and retention, on model sycophancy, and I'll come back to that one, on how it handles consumer and health data, and on how it treats minors and seniors. OpenAI says that it takes the concerns seriously and intends to engage constructively. It points to age prediction, parental tools, and rules against advertising aimed at children. Now, those are the company's claims about its own safeguards. The subpoena is the mechanism that lets somebody other than the company test whether those claims actually hold up. Now, that word, sycophancy. That is the documented tendency of AI systems to agree with you, to validate what you say even when what you're saying may be harmful. Until now, that was mostly a research finding, but it's now named in a legal subpoena, and it lands beside an existing Florida suit and litigation over the system's role in user suicides. When you zoom out, the bigger pattern is the real story. More AI bills were introduced in state houses this year than last, including by Republicans who are typically pro-business, and they've gotten narrower and sharper. 6 states, Colorado, Connecticut, Idaho, Iowa, Nebraska, and Oregon, passed laws this year governing how AI systems interact with people, especially kids. Many require disclosure when you're talking to a machine instead of a human. Illinois added an independent auditor requirement on top of that. Meanwhile, the federal direction runs the other way. An executive order directed an attorney general task force to challenge state laws deemed more than minimally burdensome, that's a quote, and threatened broadband funding. But so far, the White House hasn't gone to court or withheld a dollar. And a bipartisan draft to freeze state laws that we covered on the Century Report drew really sharp criticism from both parties and stalled. So here's the whole shape of it. The single federal rulebook that everyone keeps waiting for is deadlocked, and the actual enforceable floor for AI accountability is being poured from underneath, one state law and one subpoena at a time in the places closest to the people that these systems touch. All right, shifting over to a new story, to a different kind of friction, the human cost of building a workforce around a bet faster than the work can absorb it. A year ago, Meta committed $14.3 billion for a 49% stake in Scale AI and installed its founder, Alexander Wang, as chief AI officer. That was the cornerstone of Meta's whole AI reset, and a year later, the unit built on that bet is in open distress. The applied AI unit is 3 months old, roughly 6,500 engineers and product managers, and employees describe it as near-revolt. This week, an employee-only livestream got hijacked. Someone demanded the audience tell a senior executive he was, in their words, a piece of shit, while one presenter covered their face on camera. Many people in the unit call themselves draftees. That is their word. They were moved by surprise email into generating coding puzzles to train models with no choice but to join or quit. One of them told Wired, quote, "It's literally the gulag." The flashpoint right now is a company-wide AI hackathon scheduled for July. Zuckerberg framed it as a way to rebuild camaraderie after last month's layoff cut 10% of the staff. The people being asked to join see it very differently. One wrote in a forum open to all 70,000 workers, quote, "I'm literally preoccupied with keeping the lights on for my team." Close the quote. And separately, more than 1,600 employees signed a petition protesting software that monitors their clicks and keystrokes to harvest AI training data. That same monitoring program, the April 22nd edition of the Century Report, documented Meta rolling it out across U.S. employee computers in the weeks before the May workforce cut. Now, Zuckerberg has conceded the strain. In an internal memo, he said the company made mistakes and will almost certainly make more, and pledged to find new roles for reassigned staff and promised to scale back manager-to-report ratios that had reached 50-1. But set that memo beside the operational record. It is the self-report of the person running the reorganization, and the record next to it. Meta's first proprietary model, Muse Spark, trails OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. A year into the spend, developers are largely ignoring it. Now let me be careful not to flatten 6,500 people into one simple feeling. That unit holds distress and protest and people contesting one specific assumption, that their attention inside the company is a free input that Meta already owns. That last group is doing something really precise. They're drawing a line around what the company gets to take, and the lesson underneath it is the one that Capital keeps having to relearn. xAI's co-founders walked out teaching that lesson once. Meta is teaching it again at a much larger scale. You can buy the people, the data, and the compute. You cannot buy a research culture by decree. Now to the physical layer underneath all of this, the chips, where 3 moves in 1 week are routing around a single choke point all at once. Let's start with Google. For years, Google has built its custom AI chips, its TPUs, entirely at one foundry, TSMC in Taiwan. Nearly all frontier AI chips are made there. Now Google is in talks to split its next chip across 2 foundries. So here's the move, really plainly. A modern chip can be broken into pieces. The compute die does the heavy math. The I/O dies handle moving data in and out. Google's 10th generation TPU, codenamed Icefish, would have TSMC carve the compute die at 1.4 nanometers, while Samsung's Foundry builds the I/O dies at 2 nanometers, splitting a flagship chip across 2 foundries. That is novel. So why do it? Scarcity. TSMC's most advanced capacity has tightened under surging demand from NVIDIA and everyone else, and Google's own chip volumes have climbed as it sells TPUs to outside customers. Apple executives reportedly visited Samsung's Texas fab for the same reason. When one supplier can't keep up, relying on one supplier stops working. Second move, at London Tech Week, the UK committed £1.1 billion to AI hardware, a partnership with the Cambridge chip design firm ARM, and a £400 million procurement opening for domestic chip makers. AMD added £2 billion, Nebius another £1.75 billion for UK research and build-out. But hold the skepticism here, because the industry did. £1.1 billion does not build a foundry. One cloud executive warned that the money could end up, quote, building British-branded infrastructure on somebody else's silicon, unless the contracts are written deliberately. The ambition to own the layer is running ahead of the means to do it. Third move, Infineon is opening a €5 billion semiconductor fab on July 2nd, its largest single investment ever, an extension of its Dresden campus built with roughly €1 billion in EU CHIPS Act subsidies. These chips handle power management more than frontier logic, but the fab adds European capacity that simply did not exist before. 3 moves, 1 week, 3 different routes around the same bottleneck: Seoul, Cambridge, Dresden. And it would all add up to this: the assumption that intelligence would be built forever in 2 countries on one company's wafers. And that assumption is coming loose. It's coming loose because the economics demand it, and not because a policy asked nicely. All right, shifting away again, last one, and it's about the layer that everyone assumes is the most reliable, the firms whose entire job it is to verify everyone else. KPMG pulled its flagship report. The title was Redefining Excellence in the Age of Agentic AI. The firm took it down from its websites. Why? Because the institutions it described said the report was making things up about them. UBS, the UK's National Health Service, Swiss Federal Railways, Transport for London, each of them told the Financial Times that KPMG's characterizations of their AI work were false or misleading. The research group GPT-0 traced the inaccuracies to AI hallucinations. So let me give you the compressed version of this. A professional services firm appears to have used an AI system to help write a report about AI adoption. And the system invented details about real institutions, details that the firm then published under its own name. And this is the second one. Last month, EY pulled a report on loyalty rewards programs that carried fabricated footnotes and similar hallucinated content. So 2 of the big 4, back to back. Now, why does this cut deeper than an embarrassing typo? Because the entire commercial value of these firms rests on independent verification. A hospital trusts a Big 4 report the way that a court trusts a forensic record. That is the product, the stamp, and the stamp turned out to contain machine-generated fiction about the very clients it was supposed to be describing. KPMG's own account is the telling part here. The human reviewers were supposed to validate content and verify independent sources. Clearly they didn't. So you've got 2 kinds of intelligence handing work back and forth before anyone built the workflow to govern that handoff. The AI had no model of which of its outputs matched real institutions. The humans were meant to check that, but didn't. But here's the generative read. Look at who caught it. Not a regulator. Years later, after something catastrophic, UBS and Transport for London read the report about themselves and corrected the record publicly, faster than the firm that charged for the stamp. The gap got surfaced while the stakes were still just reputational by the people closest to the facts. Durable verification is forming, exactly where you'd expect once you think about it, inward, where the institution already knows the truth about itself. All right, let's bring it together to close today. Across today, control over frontier intelligence got grabbed at from every direction at once. Washington threw a switch and traced it to a rival CEO. A foundry choke point got pried open from Seoul to Dresden, and underneath all of it, the people closest to the work kept doing something that the people at the top didn't ask them to do. State attorneys general subpoenaed a company instead of waiting for a federal rulebook. UBS read a report about itself and corrected it faster than the firm that wrote it. 1,600 Meta workers drew a line around what their company gets to take from them. All of it accreted from below, not handed down from the top. And the clearest picture of where this goes is in India. Founders there woke up to find the intelligence that their businesses run on had that kill switch that someone an ocean away had a hand on. And you know what they did? They started building, so there'd be no switch left for anyone to throw. That's the thing that gating and trying to keep others out of something can never quite account for. You can shut a country or another person or whatever out of the intelligence that it is depending on, but the response to a closed gate isn't to just stand outside it forever. It's to build the capability everywhere that the gate was meant to keep inside. So the gate, in the end, becomes the strongest argument for spreading the very thing that it was built to contain. We'll see you tomorrow.